Painted on a wall at the Ellis Island Museum in New York City is a quote from an unknown Italian immigrant. "I came to America because I heard the streets were paved with gold. When I got here, I found out three things. First, the streets weren't paved with gold. Second, they weren't paved at all. And third, I was expected to pave them." It's not easy to build a life in a foreign land, to learn a new language, new culture, new system of government. It's hard work, and many of those who come here take the most grueling, back-breaking, mind-numbing jobs just to rise up to a desired status quo. Imagine needing to leave everything you've ever known, everything familiar, everything you've ever called home, in order to make a better life for yourself and your family. Maybe you're lucky enough to have scrabbled enough funds together to bring your loved ones with you. Maybe you have to travel alone with the hope of bringing them to you as soon as possible. Maybe you're leaving a place that allows you to go freely and with ease. Maybe you have to prove yourself worthy, sneak out, or find some loophole to get out. Maybe you can afford to take a plane, a train, a boat. Maybe you have to walk for miles and miles over days and weeks just to find a safe spot to cross a border. Maybe you're fortunate enough to be coached about how to come to America legally. Maybe you've been conned into doing things that you did not know were not the right way to do it. I'm lucky enough to have been born here to parents who could afford a good life, that enabled my sister and me the opportunity to have food and clothing and health care and never want for any of our basic needs. I'm sure that most of the people sitting in this room could say the same, but my family has not been in America forever. They had to come here from other places. My maternal great-great-grandfather came here alone from Kyiv as a young man, sponsored by a distant relative for whom he worked the rest of his life. He wanted to live a better life, and he heard America was where to do it, so he did it. On the other side of my family, my great-grandparents bought passage from Poland on a ship for themselves and their 12 children by selling everything they owned, just as anti-Semitism was rising and friends and neighbors refused to see the writing on the walls. My great-grandmother was pregnant for that voyage, and soon after they landed in New York, my grandfather was born, and he was not the youngest. You do the math. My father-in-law came here alone from Budapest. He survived a Nazi work camp and was released with Dutch papers from his aunt, and his father survived Auschwitz. He made his way aboard a ship in the wake of the Hungarian Revolution, earning money by teaching English to other passengers and landing first in Canada and then making his way to California, where he worked until he could bring his sister and parents to the U.S. My relatives have been lucky. Others, not so much. No matter how a person enters this country, they are full of hopes, fears, dreams, anxiety, and excitement. I'm sure every person in this sanctuary has a story of their family similar to at least one of mine. As people, we empathize with immigration stories because we are a part of them. As Jews, it is important for us to empathize with those who've made their way here because we know what it is like to be strangers. We know what it is like to try to fit in. We know what it's like to learn a new language, a set of new social rules and mores, a new homeland. Our ancestors' struggles are not just family history. They're echoed in our sacred texts, which insist that our experiences as strangers shape our moral obligations. Tomorrow's service are rife with the messages of empathy for those who wish to benefit from the same privileges as our ancestors and many of us have enjoyed. The Torah portion tomorrow afternoon comes from Leviticus chapter 19, known as the Holiness Code. It includes the instruction, "The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love them as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." This is by far not the only place in Torah where we're instructed to love the stranger as ourselves. This command is given to us 36 times in the Torah. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love the stranger as yourself. As you may have already heard me say in my short time here, when something is repeated, it is important. Repeating the commandment 36 times to love the stranger as yourself certainly makes it important in Jewish thought. In the Haftarah we'll be reading tomorrow, one of them, Isaiah chastises us, asking, "Is this the fast God requires of you? A day only to starve your bodies?" He answers his own question with a list of things that serve as the kind of fast God desires. Not just to abstain from food, but to share our food with the hungry. Not just to dress up in finery, but to commit to clothing the naked. Not just to see your family on holidays, but to genuinely be there when they need you, even if all they need is a phone call. Not just to live a good life, but to allow others to share in what we have. In Isaiah's words, to bring the poor into your home. To bring the poor into your home. Tzena Urena, a 16th century Yiddish biblical commentary, suggests that the line before this one, to share your bread with the hungry, means the same thing as to bring the poor into your home, which makes it another important repetition. It conflates the two commandments into the notion that we should welcome the poor into our home in order to provide for them. Of course, poor and home in both Hebrew and English are subject to interpretation. The simple meaning is to bring in people who have less than we do. Does that mean we should offer a room to someone when we see them asking for change on a street corner? Set up a discount B&B at all of our residences? Of course not. It may be asking us to welcome people into the land we call home, maybe even in order to provide for them, to give them an equal shot at the many amazing things America has to offer, warts and all. Perhaps Isaiah even served as inspiration for the new Colossus, Emily Lazarus's poem inscribed at the base of the Statue of Liberty, which ends, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." We've come a long way from this message of welcoming into our land. A long way from acknowledging our national status as immigrants to a nation fighting over who qualifies as such. A long way from begging for those struggling to join us in freedom to labeling those who try as criminals. Today, people who come in this country are often living in fear of ICE knocking on their door at any moment. My brother-in-law works for a pharmaceutical company, and he represents South America because he was born in Argentina and speaks fluent Spanish. Even though he's been a citizen since he was too young to remember, when he travels for work, my sister maintains a panicked state until he comes home, constantly worried about whether they'll let him back in the country with his American passport. My wife has congregants who have taken, my wife is a cantor, who have taken to keeping their passports on them at all times, just because they speak with an accent. A friend of mine refuses to speak Spanish in public, even if he's on the phone with his parents, because he worries that someone will try to take him into custody. He was born in Cincinnati. I know I would be upset if someone referred to my grandfather, first in his family, born in the U.S., as an anchor baby. Could you imagine what it would have been like for our families if they came into this country and were immediately labeled as illegal? We've all seen signs that were written on stores that said things like, "No dogs or Jews," and that was clearly racist, clearly offensive. But illegal hits differently. That's exactly why they use that word. People who try to twist the narrative of others who are trying to come into this country. Language that is clearly racist is used by people who understand it's wrong, and we get it. But calling someone illegal makes it seem like those seeking refuge are the ones in the wrong. They're not. This is a mistake. People who are anti-immigration use anecdotes as well as labels to make others seem like criminals. They'll even call them criminals blatantly beyond just attaching the word illegal to people who come here to make a better life. Of course, they can find stories of people who move here to do bad things. Of course they can. We can also find plenty of examples of people who were born here doing bad things. It hits differently when their last name is Madoff or Epstein than it does when their name is Robinson or Maxwell. But all four of these criminals were born here, and they actually are thieves, sex offenders, and murderers. The words we use are important. On Yom Kippur, we acknowledge our mistakes, but we would hopefully not label ourselves as criminals while we try to improve ourselves. Teshuvah, the process of atoning on this day of atonement, is not castigation, not labeling us as evil in any way. It's about self-improvement, changing habits, and making ourselves into better versions of us. So how can we find better ways of framing the narrative so we are not debating the legal status of people, but creating a way to be welcoming to all who would seek to come peacefully into our home? How do we activate our Jewish value of welcoming the stranger so it can help inform national and state policy on immigration? Glad you asked. We can advocate for people who do not have a voice. My friend and colleague, Rabbi Rachel Greengrass, spent 3 weekends at Alligator Alcatraz in Florida over the summer. Due to the efforts of the protesters and the lawyers who represented the Miccosukee tribe, they were able to relocate some of the detainees who were in terrible conditions, but now many of them are still detained and now farther away from family members with whom they came to America. And according to Rabbi Greengrass, there are 1,600 people who have simply gone missing, which is a monstrosity of mismanagement at its very best. Nevertheless, the actions taken by so many brave Floridians helped move the case against the South Florida detention facility quickly and justly, and we continue to hope for more news of positive changes to the system. We can use our voice the way our system intends. According to the Pennsylvania branch of the Religious Action Center, RAC-PA, across the country, thousands of immigrant students and their families are facing fear of deportation as they enter their schools. Schools should be a place that is safe for children to learn without fear, and for students who come from other cultures to learn how great it is to have the rights we all enjoy as Americans. The RAC is working to encourage legislation that will protect their safety and that of their families. Currently, they're working to help pass the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, which would reinstate Department of Homeland Security policy and expand sensitive location protections to a broader range of educational and medical facilities and other spaces that provide safety for immigrants. It also mandates that ICE and Customs and Border Patrol agents receive training on carrying out immigration enforcement actions and requires that both of these agencies submit an annual report to Congress on enforcement actions. Most important, we can use our brains to keep the conversation civil. It's vital that we resist the temptation of engaging with nastiness online. When a post uses dramatic, hyperbolic language that's meant to divide, we have a choice to make. If we hear it from a person who might listen to our point of view, we can open a discussion, preferably private, with a reminder that those who seek refuge, safety, a change of pace, or just a better life here deserve the same as our own families. If we hear it from a program that won't respond to us or a contact who will react badly, we can ignore them, change the channel, and not worry about reacting in a way that has no chance of making tangible change. Save your energy. We should also acknowledge that while there are people who move to America with nefarious intent, one reason we may be led to believe that these people are common is because anyone who moves here to build a life, start fresh, join their family who's already here, and simply work hard like my relatives simply are not interesting enough to make the news. Much as I love my relatives, the typical American story, the one that used to be known as the American dream, is just too mainstream for it to be worth the time of our "if it bleeds, it leads" news cycle. The normal is never what politicians speak to, and a message of monotony would never elicit your vote. It is absolutely critical that we let our legislators know how we feel. There is little more powerful in our democratic republic than the power of the voice of the voter. Sadly, it is a largely unused power, and it is so easy. All you have to do is send an email or a postcard or make a phone call to your legislators' offices. Phone calls are the most influential, but all the methods work. And the more people who do it, the more our power is compounded. We also are going to have cards that are out in the lobby with QR codes for you to, I'm looking at Karen Breen because she knows the details better than I do, that you can scan the QR code and send a message to the RAC PA. Yes.
That relates to your own school board.
That relates to your own school board to have a welcoming policy. Working local helps affect things nationally. Finally, we can learn specifics about how to take action for those who want a better life in the U.S. with us. This winter, Rabbi Feldman, Cantor Reinwald, and I will be heading to Washington, D.C. as participants in the Religious Action Center's Consultation on Conscience. While this will be the first time that I'll be attending this particular conference, I have chaperoned the RAC's Litaken conference for teens over 15 times, and I have heard the consultation is Litaken for grown-ups, so it will be awesome. This year, the conference will take place December 12th to 15th. We'll be building community together with like-minded activists, learning from inspiring teachers, growing our justice toolkit through issue-focused skill-building workshops, praying together on Shabbat and the first night of Hanukkah, and the weekend will culminate with lobbying Congress in support of the reform movement's policies. It will be an amazing experience, and sign-up information is at rac.org, rac.org, and we will definitely put links in both congregational websites. We hope you'll join us. Together, we can make a real difference in the way immigrants are treated as they work towards citizenship. We can reach out to our legislators and take the train to D.C. together for an incredible weekend of learning and putting what we learn to action immediately. We can embody the instructions of the Torah to love the stranger as ourselves, the ultimate act of empathy as a nation who knows what it is like to be strangers. We can change the language of our dialogue and remember that no person is illegal. We can make every day a day of heeding the lesson of Isaiah, welcoming the poor into our national home, welcoming them to breathe free with us. May this be the year that our fasting is not only about abstaining from food, but about breaking the chains of cruelty at our borders. May this be the year when our voices rise together for compassion and justice, and may this be the year when we, as a people who knows the soul of the stranger, live out Isaiah's vision, to share our bread with the hungry, to bring the poor into our home, and to make America once again a lamp beside the golden door. Ken Yehi Ratzon.